I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's webcast. A couple of items in the news. Italy's foreign minister says that the Lisbon Treaty is going to be ratified this week, or somehow or another will be enacted this week, and they're going to have a president of Europe. Can you imagine? That's what I understand by the end of this week. And then the Italian foreign minister says that Europe needs an army. Yeah. Now, the various countries have their own armies, but he says that Europe needs an army. So Franco Frattini, the Italian foreign minister, said that the Lisbon Treaty had established, quote, that if some countries want to enter into reinforced cooperation between themselves, they can do so. And so he warned that if we do not find a common foreign policy, there's a risk that Europe will become irrelevant. In other words, unless we have a unified army for our new nation, we might be bypassed by America and China, which is to say that the Pacific axis and the Atlantic axis will be forgotten. We need political will and commitment, otherwise the people of Europe will be disillusioned and disappointed. People needed to expect a great deal from us, and after Lisbon, we have no more alibis. So, Europe is thinking about getting an army together once they become a bona fide nation. Now, you got to understand that the motif of Israel is a woman riding a beast. That comes right out of the book of Revelation, you know. And then the Parliament building for Europe at Strasbourg, in Strasbourg, France, is actually built in and designed like an unfinished tower. Yeah, the Tower of Babel. So the various languages of Europe, be it Spanish or Italian or English or German or Dutch, whatever, are all going to be speaking one language. It is the opposite of the Babel effect. Now, Europe has been suggested to be Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, an abomination of the earth. Well, I can tell you that in the book of Revelation, Mystery Babylon is pictured as a woman riding a beast. So, it's entirely possible that the fulfillment of biblical prophecy is upon us this week. And then we have this bit of news from Israel. You remember a few days ago I told you that the Palestinians were thinking about getting the UN to recognize the Palestinian state, and that they didn't need Israel, didn't need to negotiate with Israel, didn't need Israel's approval, that they would just unilaterally by themselves declare a Palestinian state. Well, Israel now says that if the Palestinians declare a state, Israel will annex the settlements. From Israel National News, a government minister publicly advised the Palestinian Authority on Monday that if it unilaterally declares a new Arab state, Israel may annex parts of Judea and Samaria. Unlike eastern Jerusalem and the Golan Heights, Judea and Samaria remain under military rule, although all Jewish residents have the same basic rights as other Israelis. And so he said, if the Palestinians take a unilateral line, Israel should also consider passing a law to annex some of the settlements. Well, that will heat things up, I can tell you. Of course, the thought is that if the Palestinians unilaterally declare Jerusalem to be their capital and declare a Palestinian government, and by the way, they already have a parliament, they already have, their representatives elected. Mahmoud Abbas has said he's not going to run for re-election. He's very disappointed in everything. He refuses to negotiate with Israel. And so he's just going to throw up his hands and quit. But the Palestinians are thinking about, and who knows, the Hamas may be in control, thinking about a Palestinian state without Israel in any way being considered. And, of course, at that time, the United States could put pressure on Israel, pull money out of Israel, make Israel knuckle under and say, uncle, whatever. This particular article here says that Israel could annex the areas where Israel is now building settlements in Judea and Samaria. Of course, that's contested territory, you see. The foreign minister of Israel, Avigdor Lieberman, stated that he doubts that the Palestinian chairman Mahmoud Abbas will succeed in convincing the United Nations Security Council to pass a resolution declaring the borders of a future Palestinian state. Of course, you know, the Palestinians want Israel to move back to its pre-1967 borders. That won't happen. But there will be a Palestinian state one of these days. According to the prophecies of the Bible, Jerusalem will be divided. The Temple Mount will be divided. Like Solomon, wanted to divide the baby. But Israel will accept eventually some kind of division of their beloved city. According to the book of Revelation, chapter 11, John is told to measure the temple and the court which is within, but the court which is without, that is the court of the Gentiles, leave out, because it's going to be given to the Gentiles for the duration of the Great Tribulation period, 42 months. So, it looks like Israel is moving in that direction. And this tit for tat, if you do this, we'll do that. It's all going to boil down to a negotiation eventually. When? Can't tell you exactly when, but I tell you what, we are watching the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Just look back at the last century, the 20th century. We had World War I, followed by the swine flu that killed over 20 million people. We had World War II, following by a worldwide famine because they couldn't distribute the food equally because of the wars that had been going on. So we had widespread famine in 1945. And then there have been earthquakes in diverse places, and especially the renewal of the land of Israel. All of these prophecies being fulfilled, coming right out of the Bible, means that we are close. So keep looking up. Jesus is coming soon. I'm J.R. Church. We'll see you again tomorrow with our analysis of the news.